Hello, and we're back with another episode of FtLoC. I'm joined by my FtLoC friend, Mr. Henry Catchpole.
Hello, Drew Stern.
And I am, as always, Drew Stern. It's been a while. We've been, well, you especially have been travelling a huge amount. We're going to be covering that in today's episode, as well as updates on our long-termers, some bits and pieces of news and things from our channel that we think you should be watching. But how are you?
I'm all right, thank you very much.
Yeah?
Yes, it's nice to be back in the country and kind of and all that sort of thing. In the office.
In the office, in our nice studio area. Nice T-shirt.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So I bought this literally the day that our film on the S397 WRC Impreza went live, which I know a lot of you have been asking about. And finally we got it out there and it was great fun. And it's literally popped up on my feed from We the Terrors. So I went and bought it because I was like, I didn't get it the first time. So reissued it. And this is, it's an in tarmac spec. So it's got two scoops up there. So
for those who aren't entirely sure of which movie of ours you're talking about, fill them in.
So this is the ex-Colin Mcrae Subaru S3 WRC 97 that he won the Safari Rally in 1997, which is the first ever WRC rally that he won because the rules changed in 1997. They went from Group A to WRC. So it's the two-door body car, which I think just looks absolutely ace, the bigger arches and stuff. But it's still at that point where they were all still very mechanical, so lots of Group A stuff underneath it. It's still an H-pattern manual gearbox, as you'll see me go on about in the film. But
because you actually drove it.
Yes, I got to drive it, crucially, which was fantastic, just proper dream come true stuff, and such a fun car. Gravel tyres, is on D-Max, in fact, on around Kerbera. A few people asked where it was, which I think is a really great place. It's not the first rally car I've tested there, and it's really cool because it's quite narrow and it's got big curbs and stuff, and there's sort of like gravel traps. It's just straight onto grass and stuff, so it's a good place to test that sort of thing, and really quite sort of nadgety, so a bit like a stage. And it was just fabulous to drive. It was sort of in some ways perhaps not as impressive as the sort of like a fully active diff car. I still remember driving a 2005 Focus, and that was just incredible for the way it managed power. But this is much more of a sort of a driver's car, really, because you have to do so much more and stuff. And it was brilliant. George did a really good job with the edit too. There are a few transitions in there that when I saw it, I was like, wow, that's really cool. I loved how he's done that. So
it's always nice to see you enjoying something, especially which very much in this film, which we wholeheartedly recommend. We actually had two rally films up on the channel relatively quickly back to back. So this one
coincided, and it was genuinely coincident actually with Wales Rally GB that last weekend. So
so you've talked about the Colin Mcrae car one, but you got a passenger lap in a more recent
very recent, as in completely current. So
you describe it as a 2017 car, but it is the car running in 2019.
Yes, so they're just known as 2017 cars because that's when a bit like WRC, 2017 is when the regulations came in. So it's all the extra aero. It's these sort of what people were saying was a new era of Group B, I suppose, because they do look completely wild. It always looks smaller when you see them on television or in pictures and stuff like that. You sort of think, wow, they must be enormous because they look so sort of distended, I suppose, in every sort of respect. But you walk up to it and it's still kind of Fiesta size in a way. So.
Relatively the silhouette of the road car. It's
exactly.
Not
and
it is,
and they are Fiestas. They're not because they're not silhouette cars. Regulations, I think for 2021 when they come in, will mean that you can scale a car. So you could take the Fiesta and make it Focus sized, if that makes sense, or you could take Focus and scale it down to Fiesta size, which will help quite a few manufacturers, I think, in terms of being able to put a car that they want specifically onto a stage.
At what point is it not just worth just having a Focus and doing it to a Focus? If you're changing that much underneath, what's the benefit of running it as a Fiesta?
Because of the wheelbase and things like that. So the specific dimensions and tracks and things like that you want to achieve with a car, and within the regulations as well, what they're allowed to do. So you might have a car or a shape that you want to, as a manufacturer, that's the one you want out on the stages. So which conceivably with Focus RS, for example, they might think, well, that's the one that clearly we would like to be on the stages because that's the top of our sort of hatchback Ford performance tree. So but equally they might want it smaller and more nimble. As you see, the Yaris is undoubtedly a smaller car, smaller packaging. So they might think that's what they want. But so that's the reason they would be able to scale the body shell. they want. So that's anyway. Back to went slightly off topic, didn't we?
We never do that for FtLoC.
Cheapest. Well, ask Ramble. It's 2017 spec car, sat next to Gus Greensmith. A few people asked why he wasn't using the paddle shift in the car. It was just because it wasn't working on the day.
Right.
And that's a test car, so it's identical to the
because he was using the shifter way down. Not like he was in automatic mode or anything like that. He was still shifting.
No, still shifting.
He was reaching all the way past the handbrake, all the way down to this. Must have been a tiny little lever.
Yeah,
down.
It's a small lever sort of down. It's one of those things. They have it there for emergencies or as happens if the paddle shift stops working. So you used to always see it. I remember it was the 206 WRC that you could always see. It was always just there and it was just moving. So every time they moved the paddle,
it mechanically
moved at the same time. So that was always quite a sort of weird thing to watch in car. But it's there in all of them. It just paddle shift wasn't working. Lots of people to get through on the day, so it's much easier rather than putting everything behind schedule. Gus is perfectly capable of just shifting as you would in an R5 car, which he drives most of the year, because that has the lever up there. So that was it.
I think what for me what was interesting about that video, if you only saw the angle looking at your faces, you might think one thing about the hill climb that you do, the stage run that you run, and then if you looked at just the outward facing things, you would think something completely different. Because, I mean, it looks like both of you look relatively relaxed about what's happening, and then you see what's happening outside the car, and you go like, how on earth are you keeping your composure while the car is... It's the log piles, when you pass a stack of log piles, and he has a tiny bit of a moment coming into it, because he's not holding back too much.
He is absolutely not. No, I was sort of, Gus was at dinner the night before and kind of was chatting away to Elvin Evans, who was out because of he had problems with the back. Nice to see him back in Wales Rally GB very quickly. But anyway, Gus was in the car for that reason. He's driven it on a couple of rallies this year, and I knew he wasn't going to hang around. He wasn't going to give me the sort of the pottering sort of experience. So I suppose it's just a case of I've driven enough WRC cars. I'm lucky enough to have been passenger in a lot of them as well, so I sort of know what to expect. And from the point of view of being a journalist as well, I think there's a element of, I find some of you might like to see me sitting there screaming my head off, but it's I'm not really that sort of person anyway, so it wouldn't make a particularly interesting film. And if I got to the end of it and I couldn't tell you anything about the car and what it was like and kind of the feelings and what impressed me and what didn't, then I've kind of failed as a journalist to that extent. So I've always learnt over the years to kind of, I can still remember really clearly, I had a ride with Sebastian Loeb in his C4 WRC when that was coming to the end of its run, and I can remember so much of that run really, really clearly, just because you want to soak it all in, don't you? All the sort of things, and sort of, I always made a point of looking at their feet and things like that as well, just to try and see what they're doing and how they're manipulating the car, if they're doing anything particularly different and things like that. So I have an understanding of what it should be like, which I think then obviously calms me down as well. So there is one moment towards the end of it where I know that you had the back left off into he had back left off into the grass. He just overcorrected the car from one way, and we had that, and you can see me say something to him.
Very last little bit.
Yeah, exactly. You can see me big smile, and I say something to him because I know that wasn't in the plan entirely. So, but other than that, I've been down enough rally stages. Kind of, I'm not going to deny certainly that first corner. First two corners actually, because they were really quick. I mean, the first one was, I don't know, probably a 5 right from memory, and the second one was 5 left or something. So really, in my parlance, because I use 6 fastest number first for my pace notes, so that's 5th gear, say, so really quick. You're looking at probably getting on 500 miles an hour sort of thing. And that's, as I said in the film, where the difference is made with these 2017 cars, the high speed stuff, and that's the bit where it sort of very much sets itself apart from what I've driven the previous generation cars. And so that's where my expectations then are like, oh, he's not braking for this. We're going in faster than before. And that's certainly a moment which is just like, and I'm not going to do Gus the kind of the sort of, I'm not going to stamp for a brake pedal, because that would just make him delighted, and I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So, but equally, I won't deny there was a little bit of me inside that just went, "We're not braked yet," and but yeah, it was great. It was really good. I was really impressed, as you can probably tell by my reaction after getting out of the car.
Both of those films are on the channel right now. The links are in the description below. As with all of these films, we not only wholeheartedly recommend you check them out, but they may have been things that you skipped because you may have not thought that you might not be interested in rally. But I think just from seeing what these cars can do, if you have any interest in cars whatsoever, they are magnificent pieces of engineering, well worth your attention. Couple of news items. So it's been a long time since we've had a FtLoC episode, so a huge amount of stuff has happened. We went to Frankfurt. We've done a whole bunch of content from Frankfurt. You can find that on the channel, both our channel and on our sister channel Roadshow. But there was one piece of news out of Frankfurt which dominated Frankfurt, and for us and for a lot of people, we didn't even really cover it much at Frankfurt because we'd already seen it, and that is the new Defender.
Indeed it is, yeah.
Highly anticipated. The last one finished production about 3 years ago, 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, I suppose it was, because it was the V8 one, but they were all based on currently existing cars, which Land Rover then bought back and kind of converted, weren't they? So yeah.
Yeah. So and that the Defender dates back to the earliest series Land Rovers. That's a direct lineage from the very beginning of the company. So for there to be this break in it was quite significant. Highly anticipated car. And then we got to see it for the first time, and it has a lot of people talking. And we've seen your film, and we've had a walk around, and
along with everyone else in the same wood. That kind of. I would like to say that Richard Hammond was immediately after me filming that, so I was the one that walked out of the wood on that path first. So
this makes sense if you've seen multiple people's content on the car, as we do. I'm not necessarily sure that all of our viewers would have watched more than one
and
video.
Quite right too.
Yeah.
Just
ours is the best, obviously. As with a lot of these events, Land Rover put the event on and had the cars parked in a certain area where we could go and film a static walk around. And everyone walked around the cars in the same place. So you'll find a lot of videos looking the same, but obviously lacking our in-depth knowledge and expertise opinions, as Henry was delivering. I don't know why I said that kind of facetiously, but so the looks, I mean...
What do you think? Because I've seen it, and I've done a 12, 13-minute video on it, so what do you... Oh, these are so high now, aren't they? Everyone's going to complain because they can't see it. We're hiding behind them.
You're not hiding behind anything. You're like 6'6". You can't hide behind anything. Looks wise, and that is what everyone's talking about because no one's driven it yet.
Yep.
It's very different. It fits in with the new design language that Land Rover have for all of their products, and it doesn't have the boxy feel that people know and love from Defenders. That very rugged utilitarian design. But from anyone who's driven a Defender, and we used to have one as a long-termer, I spent a lot of time driving one of the last batch of Defenders. There was a lot wrong with it. Like, it wasn't a particular... you would get as wet inside the car as outside the car in a good rainstorm. Air would come in from every angle, and it was cold. And this looks like a far more modern car ready for modern day driving.
Yeah.
The design of it, it's modern. And I think it's something that people are going to have to get used to. If they'd done exactly the same thing or done something that was an homage, more of an homage to how those cars have been, it wouldn't have fit in with the rest of Land Rover's products. It's a little bit Fisher Price for my liking in terms of the curves. I don't find it particularly offensive, but then I wasn't as massive a Defender fanboy as a lot of other people. I commend Land Rover for being brave and just saying, like, we think this is how this car should look for the future, and this now sets a template for how the Defender's going to look for the next however long. I think if the car drives as well as they suggest it does, and they've described it as the most capable car they've ever produced as a company, if it does that, then honestly, it shouldn't matter what it looks like because it's a utilitarian car at its heart. I know that's not what people are buying it for most of the time. But if the Defender can go anywhere, or rather go anywhere that most other cars can't, then form should follow function, and if it looks that way, then that's the way it looks to do it.
I think there was I agree. I think that the off-road capabilities from everything that I sort of, because I did spend quite a bit the night before when I got the information, sort of poring over it and trying to compare it to the previous Defender and sort of understand it. It seems like it will be, as you would expect, it's just going to be as capable as the one before, if not more so. Certainly things like wading depth and stuff like that. It's got 900 millimeters of wading depth. It's extraordinary. But I think it had to, what it has, we know they do Discovery, which is also extremely capable off-road, more capable than most people are ever going to need.
Yeah.
Even our Discovery Sport that we had was exceptionally capable off-road. But I think there's something in Defender that has to instill that spirit of adventure. And I don't mean that kind of, you've just got to get in and think, right, where are we going to go? And there's sort of the ability to put the roof tent on the top or bung the bikes in the back. There's got to be that something about it that you think, it's fun, let's go and go off-road. And even if it's only parking down a green lane or whatever it is to go camping, it's got to have that sense of fun about it. The other thing I think is thinking about it afterwards and the sort of the things that we've had, I do think it's more akin to, say, the new Mini when that came out in 2000. Compared to, as opposed to say the Beetle, which the modern iteration of that, which was just a rebodied Golf and that was it. Whereas the Mini, you felt actually did have fine. It was completely different to the old Mini, but it still had that sense of fun in it and felt like a probably as faithful a incarnation is. Well, as I said, it was the sort of thing that if you had taken a bit like the new Alpine, if you took the original and thought what would have happened in the intervening decades, where would it be now? And you kind of think, okay, that's and effectively that feels a bit more like what they've done with the new Defender.
So you think they have done that?
Yeah, I think they've done it pretty well, and I think it certainly feels closer to Mini than Beetle, if that makes sense, in terms of not being, I suppose, a sort of a crass or sort of cheap shot, as it were, sort of at replacing it. So they could have obviously gone down the route, I suppose, of Mercedes, which they did with the G-Wagon, which there is a film on the G63 on the channel at the moment, with your questions answered. I've never been a particular fan of the G-Wagon.
And by that you mean continue with the same body style?
Yeah, exactly. So really worked hard. So the new G-Wagon, so the casual observer, looks identical to the old G-Wagon. And they could have tried to do that, I suppose, with Defender, and I think that's quite a few people would love it if they'd done that.
Yeah, but G-Wagon had already done it. Yeah. So
and I don't know how successful it would be. I mean, actually, Defender towards the end of its life wasn't that successful as a commercial proposition, and sort of this is a car that's got to sell all over the world and appeal in all sorts of markets. And I think they were between a rock and a hard place, weren't they? Really trying to do it.
You could never please anyone. I think the one possible criticism, and I can only lay that on it now because we don't know yet, we haven't seen it moving. I don't think it's going to look as good dirty.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the one thing that a lot of people said to us when we had the Defender long term and we were driving a lot is that people like to see it muddy, and people would leave in the comments, if I had this, I would immediately drive it through like a whole load of mud and then never wash it again. And the whole point is that you could never wash it and it would be fine. You could even hose out the interior and it would be fine. So this has it has the moderately not hosable down but washable down interior. It's not an Evoque, but it does feel like you'd be a little bit more, and as you're saying that, ready for adventure. I'd feel more worried about scratching the paintwork on this than I would have.
Well, it's $40,000 car for a start, so
Yeah.
And they've done that. There's this wrap that you can get. So in terms of being worried about the paintwork, they've done this, which you can then just take off, put on a new lot on, and it preserves the. Which I thought was quite a good idea. I
mean, that's we get a lot of press cars with something similar on, because they don't trust us, frankly, and they've good reason to. If nothing else, this Defender got us all talking, and it was the most talked about car at Frankfurt, I think by some margin.
Yep.
And it was certainly our most successful film from the show. And if you haven't seen it, I obviously recommend that you do. The link is in the description. Take you straight there. And I can't wait for us to drive it and actually put some of that off-roading capability to the test, hoping that we'll get the opportunity to go somewhere very interesting.
Yeah.
Push it. And because it's a completely different, it's a new, like, it's a more modern construction of car. It's not body on frame anymore. It's because not that many people are still making cars like that. And it fits in with the family. Land Rover are very much a design-driven company now. Like their products are lifestyle products. So whether that lifestyle is,
to that extent, it does make you wonder what is the future for Discovery, say, because surely people that were buying Discovery are just going to look at new Defender and go, well, actually I have a 110 Defender instead because it's a cooler thing and it's sort of
I think it might leapfrog it a little bit.
Yeah, because it's obviously presumably now got, it's going to be every bit as comfortable and have all the stuff as a Discovery. So you think, well, why wouldn't you, really?
No, it's a good point. And a lot of people were down on the redesign of Discovery as well. So this might leapfrog it and put some more pressure on to redo Discovery. It better be more comfortable. I did a lot of miles in that Defender, and comfortable it was not. Films on the channel, please check it out. In other news, big profound news, Bugatti broke the 300 mile an hour barrier
mark
yeah. In a Chiron, and we all suspected that they were going to be pushing for that at some point.
Yep.
There was definitely some pressure from people like Koenigsegg to make sure that they did it first. Cars like the Jesko, I think, were definitely going after that, but they're not quite ready to make that run yet. And even Bugatti themselves, they told us that they didn't know how fast the car could go, but we all assumed it could go over 300 miles an hour, and now it has. Yeah. With Andy Wallace again behind the wheel.
Yes, exactly.
Friend of the channel. So what is this important that the Chiron can do over 300 miles an hour? Do you think it's a relevant mark in today's car world?
I mean, no. But, it's kind of still, we know it's a massive achievement to get a car to do that number. So, and it sort of is for Bugatti because that is the whole point in some respects of that car. And I know we've done a film sort of saying that yes, it is, you don't have to do that big speed for it to be exciting. That's fine, but to the wider population, the reason for making it that heavy and that sort of is to have that big engine and be able to go ridiculously fast in a way that is repeatable and all those sort of things. Anyway, so yes, it's important for the car, I think, and it's lays down this benchmark that they were the first to do it, and by, I don't want to say big margin, but to go 304 miles an hour is, those 4 miles an hour is actually quite an achievement, isn't it? Sort of over and above
the exponential
exactly
difficulty.
So they didn't just do it. It's that was impressive. Obviously, they didn't quite manage the 500 kilometre an hour barrier, which will be the next one that I'm sure somebody will at some point.
For you metric fans out there.
Absolutely. All those fans of a Newton meter. Does it bother me particularly? Not massively. I was glad to see that. I was glad to see Andy Wallace did it because I think it's a nice continuation of, he was obviously I think he did XJ220 back in the day as well, but
as well as
I think
F1,
so. Yeah, he was certainly involved in XJ220, but then obviously the F1 is the famous run that he did, and he did he's done Veyron and Chiron and all that sort of thing before. So yeah, it's nice to see him continuing that, adding to his palmares, I suppose.
Yeah, it's. Wonderful chat, wonderful achievement. I think for me, what's most interesting, as you kind of mentioned, that the cars it doesn't need to be going that speed to achieve it. But for me, what's most relevant is that, unlike say Hennessy, who have produced cars in the past that have been like that, the Venom GT was at some point the fastest production car in the world.
Yeah.
But really, that was just a highly tuned Lotus. That's doing it a disservice, but that means you get a Lotus interior, that means you get like Lotus kind of body, and you don't get all of the top trump list.
No.
whereas Bugatti is the one that wins all the top trump.
Yeah. And we should say about this car that it wasn't a production car. This is a prototype car with we no doubt they will produce some that are off the back of it capable of doing this and all that, etc., etc. But for the sake of fairness, we don't know all the specs of this car. We also don't know what tyres it was on either. That's been awfully quiet about actually the spec of the tyres, and so I've been intrigued to know a bit more about that. Perhaps we'll ask them, see if we can find out, do a bit of digging on that. So yeah.
Well, sticking with Chiron, we did put out another film on the channel about Chiron. It's one of our most covered cars because it's the Chiron, where we asked you for your questions. We do this quite a lot on Instagram. You can follow us on Instagram at Carfection Films. We frequently will post a picture of a car that we're driving and ask you to give us your questions, which we then answer in a video. Sometimes we answer them in the Instagram story, but more frequently we make a video just based around your questions. And sometimes those questions are really, really interesting stuff we may not have thought about. So it's really great to get that interaction with you guys, the viewers, and pull out to this car the information that you are really interested in having. And
I would never have wondered if it was possible to play a board game on the top of a G-Wagon, actually, unless one of you had asked. So thank you for that.
Someone recently asked me how to express the car length or all the car's dimensions based on Henry Catchpole's height as a unit of measurement, which I now have as a calculation method and can give you on any given car. But in this film, you had the chance to, actually with a former co-driver of Andy Wallace was your co-pilot in the Chiron. Yes, and you answered people's questions. How was it to get back in the car and give it for another drive? In terms of drives, it was relatively pedestrian. This was from the middle of California up to Monterey.
Yes, yeah. So up PCH, Pacific Coast Highway, which is a road I don't think I'd ever driven before.
Really?
Actually, so that was nice in itself. As you say, it's not a road you can drive particularly quickly on. Much of the time, I was able to give it the occasional burst, but that was it. Lovely to get back in the car. Lovely to feel it again. This is the one with the glass roof, the sky view roof in it, which is one of those things you think, it's not really going to make much difference, and it doesn't open. It's not a sunroof, as it were, but a bit like the panels in a Senna that are down in the doors, and sort of people are like, you're not going to drive along looking for an apex down through there, but they add a certain airiness to the car. They give it a different feel, which is quite nice to be like that sort of thing. It was nice to get back in the car, nice to feel it again. It's an extraordinary car to be in and be around, didn't change my perspective on it, which is good because I liked it anyway. So there we are.
Well, link for that is in the description. But that film was the team were in California, Henry and Charlie and George, but for 2 full weeks. So you went on a tour and actually recorded a whole bunch of content. So talk us through some of the stuff that you got up to out there.
Oh wow, we did an awful lot. Starting with arriving at Heathrow Terminal 5 to be told that our flight was cancelled. In fact, Charlie and George they'd already checked in and gone through. I was standing in the car park when I got the text message. So I ended up going via San Francisco. I ended up going via Las Vegas. Half our bags turned up, and it was a good start to the trip.
There's been a lot of strikes by BA, and it affected people like us disproportionately high.
But once we were out there, it was great. We used a lot of roads. Some I'd been to before, some I hadn't been to before, sort of above LA, which were just fantastic. We drove the Corvette ZR1, so the last of the front-engined Corvettes.
Of course it is, because they've now switched to mid-engine.
Yep.
Of course,
yep.
the C8. Yeah.
So that's how we kind of pitched our film a little bit. So that's then we also had Hellcat Red Eye, which I liked a lot.
All these
more
cars
than
we can't get over here.
Yeah, exactly. So that was really good fun to go and drive. A couple of Porsche 911s that have been reimagined or tuned by people. So that was really good. So you can probably guess at least one of them, maybe not the other one. So that we did that after coming back from Car Week, which most of our films are up from Car Week now, I think.
Yes.
So that was the
Monterey Car Week, Northern California, end of the summer. The show you're probably most familiar with is Pebble Beach, but also the Quail is the other big show. If anything, the Quail is slightly smaller, but probably even more exclusive than Pebble Beach. a lot of money exchanging hands for a lot of very, very expensive cars. People picking up multi-million-dollar cars in the way you might pick up groceries.
Not in a basket.
Not in a basket, but if they could, they would gather car keys in a basket, and that would be quite the power move.
Yes.
So there's a roundup from the Quail, and there's a few bits and pieces from the shows from Monterey Car Week. It was your first time at Monterey Car Week.
Yep.
So I've only been once before myself, a long time ago. But what did you make of all the pomp and pageantry of these shows?
It's an amazing thing to go to. You know, it's I suspect it's one of those things. It's quite easy to be sniffy about concours and things like that, and I get it. You know, it's not.
They can be a bit
tea,
stuffy, yeah.
But yeah, I didn't actually find it too stuffy. Everybody there, genuinely, really is a car enthusiast. You know, they might have much more money. I always think that's the nice thing about cars. One of the wonderful things is it does bring people from all over together. You know, it's. I remember being in LA before, and we commented on this, that it could be somebody with a lightly tuned Mazda MX-5 or Miata, all the way up to somebody with a Chiron, and both would actually look at each other's cars potentially, because if you're a car person, you're a car person, and it sort of doesn't really matter about the money side of it. So I think that's actually a really nice side of it. Having said that, obviously it costs a lot to get into Pebble Beach and stuff like that. We're lucky because we get press tickets, so that's how we can sneak in there, the scruffy lads that we are.
We didn't sneak in.
We didn't sneak in, no. All right. I wouldn't be able to sneak in the trousers I was wearing, so which a lot of you have commented on.
I've only been to the Quail once, and I snuck in.
Did you?
Yeah. Wow. Someone literally let me in the back. Because I didn't
jump over a hedge or something like that.
No. We called someone we knew on the inside, and they let us in a back door. Don't tell anyone at the Quail that.
I won't. Just between us. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's incredible to think that you go somewhere like Pebble Beach and you see all the cars, and there are a lot of cars there, all worth a lot of money, but equally each one is generally the tip of an iceberg. So each car is part of a collection, and when you start thinking about that, it's the mind boggles in a way at the sort of the amount of car culture out there, we can call it that. So yeah, it was an amazing thing to go to. So not necessarily my normal sort of thing, but I enjoyed it.
So we have, as I say, quite a bit of content still left to come from the guys' trip out to California, including the features on the cars, the individual cars that Henry mentioned, and the reimagined, retuned, retooled, reborn Porsches, which
and an F-150 Raptor, which is what we actually use as our transport all the way around.
That's a hell of a
California
crude car to have.
It is, yes. Yeah.
We will come on to what our current long termers are very, very shortly. Once I pull this up for the running order, but yeah, a lot of fun was had. Stay subscribed to the channel to see all that stuff coming through. Now back to Europe. And developments, but staying with Porsche, Taycan.
Yes.
So Taycan has broken cover in that everyone has driven it, or many of us have been given the opportunity to do so, and you have.
I have.
Taycan, obviously Porsche's first all-electric car, and yes, it's quite a leap for a company like Porsche, who's so based around drivers' cars, to make the commitment to make an all-electric car.
Yep.
From your video, again, links in the description, you give me the impression that you think it's a bold step in the right direction, but not quite there. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think there's two ways of looking at it. It's as an EV, as a car to use every day and sort of as transport. It's a lovely way to get around. A couple of people accuse me of sort of whining about sort of not liking EVs, and that's not the case. I genuinely think they have a place. There is no argument really against their sort of the lack of emissions for city driving, for a lot of everyday driving, which is not long journeys, sort of to and from an office perhaps or whatever like that. very quiet. There's an awful lot to recommend them, and I've enjoyed driving EVs. It's a different experience. I like different experiences in vehicles, and I think that's interesting. And I don't want to give the appearance of sort of being some Luddite that is just railing against EVs. Is no, it's not petrol, therefore I don't like it. That's not the case. However, I do think that as a Porsche, and you read the press pack, which I did from beginning to end, and it talks about it being a sports saloon, and it's a Porsche that comes with a certain expectation. They produce the Cayenne. You think, right, that is not just going to be any other SUV. It is going to have a certain amount of Porsche in it. I have done big skids in Cayennes round tracks. They are actually surprisingly fun to drive in a guilty pleasure kind of sort of way. So you put a certain amount of that onto the Taycan, and I think a lot of other enthusiasts look to Porsche and their first EV with hope that this is going to prove sort of how EVs are going to be fun for people that like driving. So that was the other side of the sort of the flip side, I suppose, of how I was looking at the Taycan. And to that extent, I think I'm yet to be convinced as to how EVs really will engage the driver from a driving sort of perspective. I hardly mention the sound actually in the film because I figure that's just, it feels like an easy, sort
You're
of low
open
blow.
with it to a certain extent.
Yeah, sort of, but more is just sort of going around because we had the sound generator, which I know some people did want to hear more of. Sorry, it's just one of those things we kind of perhaps failed this time. We'll get it in again, I'm sure, and do something with that. But it's a synthetic sound, which is quite amusing for the first 5 minutes. It's sort of one of those things, that's quite fun, and then you go, actually, that's not really kind of, it's just a drone when you're going along, so you turn it off, and it doesn't quite match what you're doing when you're driving quickly, so it seems better to be in silence, I think. But the rest of it, the four-wheel drive system felt very conventional, really, in the way that it was shuffling the torque around. I know it's 2 motors, so it's not hub motors, so it's not, you can't do the individual wheel thing, but you still expect with that instant deployment, and perhaps it was going to be able to do something more clever with torque vectoring to
like
that
the
extent.
NSX does.
And just sort of something. It really didn't feel, certainly on the wet roads we drove it on, that it was doing anything particularly clever. And the steering was quite light, not a lot of feel accurate, but not amazing, and it just sort of, it still feels like these straight line figures are what everybody is focusing on in terms of making an EV performance, and that's just not, I just don't think it's very interesting.
No, that is where EVs shine. I think for me, kind of the telltale sign was the packaging and what Porsche decided to make their first EV car. I think the first all-electric car that started to really prick up people's ears in the modern era was the original Tesla Roadster. A completely impractical car, but a fun car, and it kind of exploited the fun of the acceleration that you can have. Porsche have perfect form with 2-seater Roadsters, and this could have gone in that direction. But I think by making it something that's saloon, so more practical based, it both taps into that idea that we've got the Model S, and so that kind of practicality can be part of it, but also lowers your expectations for sportiness and handling, and it allows them to lean on things like that brutal acceleration more. I think that we will know when Porsche thinks it's really there when it does make a 2-seater Roadster that's electric. That'll be the point where they go, this is going to nail it, because the Cayenne and the Panamera, anything that they retain of that Porsche-ness is a bonus, because they're bringing the other things, the practicality of the size with the badge. Anything that you can retain from a drivability is a huge bonus. Like saying, I can actually hustle it around the track. You should be able to hustle the Porsche around the track. That's the point, but it's surprising because it's an SUV. So this size-wise, this is bigger than a 911, but it's smaller than a Panamera.
But it weighs 2.3 tons.
So and it weighs more than a Panamera.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? I think they couldn't have, if they want those performance figures, then they kind of need, undoubtedly most of that is down to the hardware underneath it of an EV. And if you're going to have it, if it's going to weigh 2.3 tons, you've got to make it, a 4-door of some description, because you can't make it into a
2.3 ton 2-seater.
Exactly. So it's sort of I don't know. there we are. There's just things like throttle response hadn't occurred to me before, but having that instant throttle response all the time is kind of
painful.
Yeah, in a way, you think, oh, that's a bonus, but actually, halfway through a corner in the wet, kind of, do you want that instant throttle response?
I found that in the Model 3. Like after a while, I dialed it back. I was just getting a bit sick of it. It was too. It seemed silly. Like it used to be throttle response was instant, and now we're just used to it being between turbochargers and drive-by-wire. Everything is slightly delayed. So now when you have an instant boost, it feels weird.
There was something with the regen. So I quoted Porsche's figure about sort of not thinking that it would be able to do the 90% braking under regen, which was a slight misunderstanding on my part, I think, of the fact that obviously the regen comes through the brake pedal as well when you brake, and before it actually uses the pads and discs. But the thing that I was getting at is the fact that it doesn't have very strong sort of the one pedal, I suppose. When you lift off, you can have a bit of it, you can press the button and get a bit of it, but it's really not that strong at all. And I would like, we actually cut it out of the film because it just didn't quite work, but having some paddles like they had in the SLS electric, I think, which is something I didn't understand at the time when I read the reviews. I couldn't quite work it out. But now I've driven the Taycan and other electric cars, you think, actually having paddles to be able to just increase the regen. So there, particularly on the road, there are corners when you come to it and you think, well, I don't want to be jumping on the brakes sort of every 2 seconds. I mean, you don't want to be lighting up the rear brake lights for a start. Sometimes you just want a bit of just lift off, and normally in an internal combustion engine car, a bit of engine braking just to help balance the car, or just that's all you want, and you don't get that at the moment. So I think paddles, just to be able to increase engine braking as you would get if you were changing down gears, would actually be really quite good. That's not the Porsche philosophy at the moment.
So I see what you mean, like that you would engage and disengage like the way that you would regulate your engine braking by going up and down the gearbox.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So you could just increase the level of regen that it was allowing. So which other cars have, EVs have done, I think, in the past. So
so I think,
and would make it more engaging, I think, as well.
Yeah. Now that does make kind of sense. So most of the regen, the regen is now all behind the brake pedal.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And did that significantly affect how the braking felt to you? I know you didn't really push it in terms of performance driving out on track or anything like that, but
no, but I drove it sort of kind of fast enough on the bits of the road I could, and it's, to me, I think the braking fundamentally, I find there's an imbalance between the rate of acceleration you've got, where it feels like it weighs about a ton, and then you get straight into a braking zone and you've suddenly got a car that feels like it definitely weighs 2.3 tons, and you're trying to stop it, and it really feels big. The actual sort of braking feel, it's difficult to tell slightly. So I didn't find the brake pedal itself that bad in terms of feel, but I did find the fact that it weighs so much that that's really noticeable and sort of lengthens braking zones. And there's a certain amount of I know quite a few test drivers and race drivers who've driven EVs said that they find themselves out braking themselves quite a bit sometimes, partly because of the weight and partly because of the lack of sound as well, because of course if you're driving along, actually you have a knowledge of perhaps where you were the previous lap in terms of engine note as to where you're going to brake, as well as the sort of just the visual thing, so that can all sort of shift slightly. So it's better
acceleration, worse brakes.
Exactly, which is it's not
the best.
No.
It's not the best combination. But the film's out on the channel, and undoubtedly we'll want to revisit it over the next year or so, just to kind of see where we feel on that. It's the inevitable march of everyone moving to EVs, which obviously we're very much behind. I think there's, as you say, there's always going to be some room for sports cars in the truest sense being internal combustion engines, but electric cars are coming, and this is a sign that that brands like Porsche are committing to it, and it will probably sell like hotcakes, I imagine.
I should think it probably will. Yes, absolutely.
So that is on the channel, link in the description. Now I wanted to move on to long-termers. You're still running yours?
I'm still running mine. Yes. Yep.
And what have you been up to in the last Well, since the last
Well, I've been in
episode.
America, so no. It's so the E53, which I am in, and thoroughly enjoying it. So it's one of those cars that I certainly, because I jump in and out of all sorts of things. It's one of those cars you get back to an airport, as I did last night, and it's a lovely thing to get into, and that I think is not to be underestimated. I was never a fan of the sort of previous generation Mercedes interiors. I just found the sound and stuff really hard to.
I always feel like it was bolted on. And
exactly, yeah.
Tech was old.
And actually, still, if you get in, AMG GTR Pro and GTR, they've got and I think GT4 as well has got the sort of the trackpad instead of the wheel and things like that, which I just find really annoying. But the E-Class has still got the wheel and stuff, and it's got the little trackpads on the steering wheel, and that was something which I didn't know whether I would get used to or
the little
not.
kind of glossy black nubs.
So exactly, they're like they are just like the trackpad on there basically,
but tiny.
Exactly, yeah. And the right hand one does the screen in front of you, and left hand one does the screen over there. And it's actually quite good just being able to keep your hands on the wheel. It works pretty well. So there is an awful lot of tech in that car. One thing which was the lights as well, which are really cool. I did a bit of research on those, and they've got the multi-beam LEDs. I think got 84 LEDs in each light or something like that, in sort of 3 rows, and they can cancel them out, as you've seen before in sort of VW did it, and all that sort of thing. But they do clever things like when the road's really wet, you don't want the glare coming back up, so they can dim the lower level ones so you don't get the glare from that. Pick up signs, and just they won't turn it off completely from high beam, but they'll just lower it down so you don't get
the huge glare
off those, which actually I remember talking to Chris Meek about sort of what was the most difficult thing. He said sort of Rally Monte Carlo at night with the full beams up, and he said obviously the flashbacks from the signs on there which are reflective, so that's one of the most difficult things to actually deal with when you're driving at night in a stage. And it's these will dim down, which I think is really clever, and obviously they will pick out the cars whether you're following a car or another one coming the other way. There's still
you can have high beam on, but it punches a hole.
It works it out and tracks. It's really sort of kind of fun to watch as well. So I found that pretty fascinating.
It is insane what they can do right now. I have a new long-termer.
Do you?
Yes, I do. I am running a Kia Sportage. Yes, a diesel mild hybrid. And
is it the 1.6?
Yes, and I really love it. I've started since I got it. I just started the Trip computer, one of them, and I've just started like running it from the beginning just to see how long have I actually spent driving this car. I think I've clocked 60 hours of driving in it so far, and I'm trying to get as high as possible MPG. I've got a heavy foot, so I'm only. I think they quote about 48 MPG. I'm around 41, but it's obviously a much lower performance car than we usually have on Carfection. We need practicality for our crew cars just to be able to get around. And as much as it's great to have things like an RS6 as your crew car.
We have budgets to think about.
But the Kia Sportage, I think for me, its biggest win at the moment is it's the first car I think for a long time I've taken home and used and transported my family, and that my wife has absolutely loved. Oh. She absolutely is the kids love it as well because it's comfortable. There's a huge amount of space. I know you've had a go in it as well. You're not quite as enthusiastic as I am.
Not quite, no. I mean, throttle response is akin to an F40. As in, you can, an F40 off boost. That is to say. So an F40
to the
off boost.
That might sound like a compliment, but it's not.
This is the second analogy I've made with an F40. Unlikely analogy with an F40 I've made. I made one in the RSQ3, another film you can see on the channel.
We should just stop it there. Just tell Kia that. Henry Cashwell says the Kia Sportage. It's like an F40.
Let me qualify that. So F40 off boost, below 4,000 RPM, at which point it becomes rabid. Below that, you can flatten the throttle of the foot and come off again, and basically nothing happens. Same with Kia Sportage. Yeah, you can flatten the throttle floor and come off again, and nothing will happen.
Its single biggest flaw is the throttle response, and if you combine it with the auto stop start, which is quite sluggish.
Unlike the E53, which is brilliant in terms of its stop start.
I'm not a big fan of stop start. in its use. I'm a big fan of what it does for the environment, because it's stopping the engine when you don't need to, especially if you pull up and you're there for a lot longer than you thought. You thought, crap, I could have had the engine off this whole time. Brilliant for that. But I do find that I have to blip the throttle before I know I'm going to have to pull away just to get the stop start to disengage.
And that is the good thing about the E53, because it's got the mild hybrid on the back and it's got the motor and stuff like that. It starts up instantly. It starts up the way you want stop start to. So you're off and going without having that delay and that sort of think, I'll go for a gap. You can go for it, rather than that. I
don't think the delay is the stop start. Like the engine starting. I think it's just the signal being processed that I wanted it to stop start. So I think it's that, rather than, because it's a mild hybrid as well. So it's that's its downside. Yeah. It's not the fastest car in the world, but it's it's 1.6 diesel, but
with the CVT gearbox.
But all the things that count against it. But it's got everything that I need in a car, including rear heated seats, which I don't think we've ever had. Yeah, it's got all the toys. And Apple CarPlay, all that.
Don't
good
make
stuff.
the mistake that Harry once made of doing a long journey with your child in the back, saying, "I'm really hot," and him thinking, "Oh, no, it's absolutely fine. You don't be silly." Be absolutely, and then realising there were heated rear seats on, and they'd been on absolute roast for the entire sort of entire time. So
no, I would. Well, the heated rear seats are good for us when we're traveling, but my kids are still young enough that they're in. Booster seats, so unless the booster seat would melt. But I've clocked in some serious miles in that car, and I'm really enjoying it. We have a few films on that car coming, including an introduction film and a Your Questions Answered one. And of all the cars that we have on Carfection this year, this is the one that most of you are probably able to afford, more than some of the higher end Taycans and Bentleys and whatnot. Actually, one of the films that we've got coming to the channel next week is the Bentley Continental. Not the Bentley Continental, is the Bentley Flying Spur. I just immediately say Bentley Continental because the Continental is the car that has been kind of the default staple for the company since 2003. And now the lineup is slightly wider. The Flying Spur, get it right, new Bentley Flying Spur embargo lifts next week, so I can't tell you what it's like to drive, but you will have seen pictures of it up on everywhere, including our Instagram feed at Carfection Films. Did I mention that? You should follow it on Instagram, or Henry Catchpole or Drew Stern. While you're at it, why not? Have fun. It's a car of some description that you will find out what I think about when the embargo lifts, which is a few days after this goes out. On the 16th, I believe, of October, which I got to stay in Monaco for that.
Fancy.
I was put up in the Hotel de Paris in Casino Square in Monaco, and I've never been. And I got to walk the F1 circuit. Mostly, I could get through the tunnel, but then where it goes left to go past swimming pool up to Rascasse was all blocked off because they were dismantling the yacht show. Because Monaco's the kind of place where you'll have a yacht show, so I had to walk down the start-finish straight to Rascasse and then double back. But it was what a place! Sun was shining. It was brilliant. I think the only thing missing were actually nice cars, because we didn't see that many, which was a real shame.
Oh.
We were driving the nicest cars that we saw, to be fair. But that film is coming to the channel very, very soon, as is your film on the Aston Martin Vantage manual AMR
which has a manual gearbox,
which is great. Is it a dog leg?
How do you know that?
It's great that they make it, is what I'm saying. The caveat, I haven't driven it, so my opinion about it is limited to that it exists, and the fact is that they still make manual transmission cars, which as we know, manuals matter. Have you seen that film? Links in the description. Well worth a watch. Is it a dogleg box?
It is, yes. So it's the 7-speed dogleg box from...
Yeah, the last one was as well. That takes a little bit of getting used to, but...
or does it?
The last one did, for me. Caveat. I haven't driven this car. I can't break any embargoes because I don't know, because I haven't driven it. Henry has. Embargo lifts on the 23rd of October. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you see that film. And if I know anything about Henry, is that he always has fun in a manual car. but I don't know if he did on this one because the embargo hasn't lifted. Come back on the 23rd. Right. Moving swiftly
move on?
Oh, I've been locked. Sorry.
Shall I talk for a bit?
I've been locked off.
Talking of Aston Martin, news, convertible version of the Vantage has just been unveiled today. It looks like a convertible version of the Vantage, so there we go. That's about all we know. Looks a little bit like the F-Type from the side.
And they're calling it a Volante?
I think so. Just says Vantage Roadster, I think.
Oh, okay. So is Roadster a different category than Volante?
I don't know. I did talk about Volante means flying, doesn't it?
It does.
Because I mentioned that in DBS Volante. So I assume they'll probably differentiate here. I assume they'll go Roadster because Roadster is a bit more sporty, perhaps, than Volante. So I would have thought it'd be Vantage Roadster, and it's got a sort of fabric roof, unlike the C8 Corvette.
Yes, because the convertible of that got unveiled.
Which has a folding hardtop
and room to stow it. It's folding hardtop, so it's not removable.
Yes, no, it's just folding hardtop. Still reckon you can get the 2 sets of golf clubs in the boot and the flight luggage and stuff in the
Why would you need to get 2 sets of golf clubs in the boot?
Well, because there might be 2 if you go into a golf club.
Yeah, but then
2 if you play golf.
I play golf and I've never driven with someone to go and play golf. We've always arrived in our own cars. Terrible for the environment. I should really rethink that. Oh. Yeah.
My father and I used to go and play golf.
Oh, to be fair, when I played with my dad, yeah.
So, you know.
We play golf.
Now we've kind of got a reason for.
Well, there you go. I'll buy a C8 Corvette and
go and play golf.
And go play golf.
Yeah. So, and you can have sort of a standard cabin bag and a laptop apparently in the front stowage as well. So there we are.
Brilliant.
It's a slightly odd time of year to unveil 2 Roadsters. I suppose not if you're in the
It depends
US,
on where you are in the world. Yeah, I mean, there's parts of the
but
US where that makes sense all year round.
Yeah.
California, say, where Corvettes are popular.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to driving the new Corvette at some point. I love the C7. After many, like from C4, 5 and 6, which were just very underwhelming cars considering how spectacular the first 3 generations of that car were, and then the C7 felt like, ooh, enjoyed it. Also got to drive it around La Sarthe, which is when you get to have a great experience with a car, it kind of solidifies it in your head regardless of its flaws. We weren't going to talk about C8 Corvette, but we did know a little bit. Brilliant. FtLoC is a great opportunity for us to talk about things that either have made it to the channel or won't make it to the channel, and we're wondering how much we can stretch that out. There's lots of areas where we have interests that are tangential to cars that you might share with us, and one of the ones that came up that we thought we might start discussing are watches.
I think you said bicycles.
No. Watches. Many of you comment on Henry's watches in the films that he's in.
Everyone comments on the fact you wear 2 watches.
So we thought we might use that. I mean, we are both watch enthusiasts. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
I do wear 2 watches because I love watches so much, and I have a very fine selection of extremely cheap watches. Because as much as I love this job, it doesn't pay enough to have a lot of nice watches. But we wondered if you might be interested in us including a segment in FtLoC about watches, stuff that either we've worn or things that are coming out, mainly with an automotive lean and bent. There are many overlaps. Singer, for example, do their own watch now. Singer, the reimagining 911 people. Icon, one of my favorite car companies in the world, who do things like the Bronco, like the reimagined Bronco, and they do the Derelict series. If you haven't checked out their channel on YouTube, Jonathan, the guy who runs the company, is one of my favorite people in the industry, and his channel is just him talking about his cars that he's driving. It's fabulous. They did a watch, all of these watches that cost like tens of thousands of pounds, but they are worth talking about. And if you are interested, let us know in the description below. I think I'd quite like to talk about that.
You
from
would,
time
to
I really would.
This is really, can I say
I just really want to do a watch channel. It's the only reason I've ever done cars, is just to one day be able to talk about watches. No, not really. But if there is any interest in that whatsoever, please let us know. There's lots of stuff that I'd like to talk about that is tangential to cars, and I feel that FtLoC could be a point where we could do that. I mean, hell, if you've made it this far into an episode of FtLoC, then I feel like that you just want to hang out with us as people. So I feel at this point we could talk about anything. I got.
Oh, now I'm worried about where this is going.
No. I have. I've been trying out over the summer. There's a couple of different products of stuff that I've never tried before, and there was 2 products in particular.
I'm still worried, by the way. I know you are as well. I'm worried too. Right, go on. What products?
2 products. One was solid state cologne. So instead of it being in a bottle, which you have to carry around with you and spray,
like a block of soap or something?
No, it's a tin where it's been the scent has been processed into a wax. So almost like a hair wax where you do it in your hair, you can just do it off and rub it on. But it's a tiny little box and it fits in your pocket. And it's been one of my favorite products to use over the summer. I really enjoyed having it because it travels with me, and because it doesn't kind of show up as a liquid or anything like that, or it's very small anyway. It's easy to travel with on planes, and it makes me smell nice all the time. It's been really fun.
Right, fine, okay, right. I have been reading a book that I've really enjoyed, which is we didn't plan this at all, did we?
No,
I had no idea you were going to talk about solid state cologne. Called Skunk Works.
Okay,
which is really good. It's all about, so the phrase skunk works, which some of you may know, is obviously now used for like any car company that does something sort of out of hours almost, just to sort of there's been various cars that have happened in the past that have emerged from sort of engineers going a bit rogue and sort of doing something in a shed when anyway, like
the Golf GTI.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah. But that phrase came from Lockheed, who make the planes, and it came out of that, and they produced the U-2 spy plane and the SR-71 and the stealth plane and things like that. So, it's by Bill Rich, who was in charge of that after Kelly Johnson, and it's all about the history of that and SR-71, and it's absolutely fascinating. So if you like aeroplanes and engineering,
I like the SR-71 in particular.
Yes, it's one of those planes, isn't it? That is a fascinating book. I thoroughly recommend it. Called Skunk Works.
Have you ever seen the movie Daryl?
No.
It's a kind of a little bit of that off the back of E.T. There was a lot of kind of boy and alien or boy and technology kind of films. There was Flight of the Navigator as well, and there was a film called Daryl, which is about a boy who doesn't know that he's a robot. It's really good. And Daryl stands for Data Analyzing Robot Youth Life Form.
It's quite solipsistic, isn't it?
But he flies an SR-71 Blackbird in it. Yeah. He breaks in to an Air Force base and flies one. It was the first time I'd ever seen one in a film or in any kind of imagery, and it's just like, oh my god, the thing looked like the future, and then I realized it was actually developed in the 60s.
Here's one good fact about it. There's so many good facts about it, I could just talk for hours, but anyway, it's called the SR-71.
Yeah,
it was actually meant to be called the RS-71,
right? But
when the president announced it, he announced it as the SR-71 as a typo. And so rather than go back and him just admit that it was, he got it wrong and it was meant to be RS-71, they had to change a whole load. It cost them thousands to go and change a whole load of stuff so that it read SR-71 rather than RS-71.
Sure.
So there we go.
How much stuff would have the name on it? Surely it was a secret military project. It was
but even so, all blueprints and everything like that, because you imagine the kind of filing and all that sort of, it's just...
That is a great fact.
So there we go.
I love the fact that when it's standing still in the hangar, it leaks from every part. Yeah, and it doesn't seal up until it's at full speed.
So it takes off with basically empty tanks and has to go and refuel straight away.
There you go. We've moved on from cars to watches.
So we haven't done a FtLoC for a long time. It's like we're having a proper catch up. I haven't seen you for ages. I read this brilliant book over the summer. I've been using Steady State Cologne.
Anyway, let us know if you've made it into this section of the show, because we can tack this on to the end of any FtLoC. Bore you senseless with more information like that. I think we've talked for quite a long time.
We have.
I think we can draw a line under this week's FtLoC. As always, thank you so much for watching to the end. It means a lot to us. We know for a fact that you who have made it to the end of an episode of FtLoC are our best subscribers. And what surprises me the most is that when there's a big gap between episodes, we have actually quite a lot of people asking us where it is and when the next episode is coming. So there's clearly a few crazy ones of you out there who like this show, and we really, really appreciate it. We know you're already subscribed. Please also hit the notification bell icon and make sure you've enabled notifications on your phone especially. It really helps you see our films as soon as they come out, and the more people watch them as soon as they come out, the quicker we can get them to you and get more views on them. We need those views to stay up to keep these films free. We don't want to go behind a paywall or anything like that. So many other people have had to go down that route. It's our number one priority to keep these films free for you to watch, and I'm sure you'd prefer it that way too. Again, follow us on Instagram at Carfection Films, or at Henry Catchpole, or at Drew Stern, Stearne. It's weird. Don't worry about it. Follow us on Twitter at Carfection, and find us on Facebook as well. But that's it for now. Thank you, Henry, for joining me. Hopefully it won't be as long until the next episode of FtLoC. And we'll see you again next time. Thanks a lot.
Cheerio.